Hello and welcome to another episode of Notes from School. This is incredibly exciting as I've got two of the longest serving members of the King's Singers, the most incredible vocal group, probably the best in the world, of a 6-part male vocal a cappella. And today's episode is also going to be the final episode of this season of Notes from School, the podcast. I started the podcast at the beginning of this year in 2025, and honestly, I've absolutely loved putting together every episode. It's a lot of work, I've got to say. It is a lot of work. So I think it's time for a bit of a summer break. So this episode goes out at the end of July, and I'm going to take August off from episodes and hopefully come back all guns blazing next term. And if you have missed any of the episodes in the meantime, please do feel free to go back through the 25 other episodes that we have in the bag and explore some of the other songs that I've sung, some of the other guests that we've had in the Assembly Hall. But for now, I hope you really enjoy this chat with Julian Gregory and Chris Bruerton from the King's Singers. I'm so excited. I hope you enjoy the chat. There's so much interesting stuff in here. So make sure you stick all the way to the end of this episode and have an amazing rest of the summer if you're listening to this in the summer, and hopefully see you again in September. Enjoy the chat. All right, here we go. So welcome to an episode of Notes from School that I've been very excited about, and these guys that have come on to this episode I've been hoping to get from episode number 1, and we have a special visit in the digital assembly hall today from the King's Singers. Welcome, Chris and Jules from the King's Singers.
Thank you so much. Great to be here with you, man.
So if you've never heard of the King's Singers, I don't know where you've been, but they've been a vocal group since 1968, is that correct? Taking it all the way back, so it's nearly your guys' 60th anniversary coming up, right?
Yeah, 2028 is the 60th. It all kicked off at King's College in Cambridge way back in the day with some friends who really enjoyed singing with each other, throughout university, and then kept doing it. And then fast forward to now, and we're still good friends, except that we didn't all study together. But
it's different. It's a rotating cast of members, so it's not the same guys from 1968.
Yeah. Our skincare routine's all right, but it's not that good. So it's wonderful to keep in touch with some of the old guys, and they're still going strong. Some of them, which is really exciting.
Do you have any special plans for the 60th anniversary?
Yeah. Every big anniversary, so the 50th and the 40th, and I think the 25th is a particularly big one as well. We kind of a few years ahead of that anniversary season, because obviously we're always planning in advance, and we think to ourselves, how do we want to celebrate another epic milestone for this group, this institution, which is obviously much bigger than just the current membership, and that includes all the fans and followers and listeners all around the world. And so we come up either with a theme or, basically what kind of a party do we want to have through the year? And it's also an opportunity to engage with probably the most prestigious venues across the world. And so, covering the entire globe, getting down to Australia and Asia and, I'm sure South America and as well as North America and Europe and who knows, South Africa would be ideal. But I think we're thinking, how can we celebrate in a way which engages with all of our fan base? And so that means a diversity within the programming, and perhaps thinking of a theme which is celebratory, but also nuanced and kind of can be inclusive and interesting and stimulating.
Nice. You're going to have a mega world tour. Are you going to invite any former members to come and join you as special guests?
Oh, I hope so.
Well, actually, you will be a former member by that point, won't you, Chris?
I will be. I'll be looking on with delight at how good they are sounding, and it'll be lovely if there's a chance to do something. We did something similar in the 50th anniversary, and I think it was pretty cool. Not just for all of us on stage, but I think for all the audience to see just all the generations of former King's Singers on one platform. So who knows? Yeah. Who knows what they've got planned? But I would jump at the chance.
You're coming up to the end of your tenure as a King's Singer, Chris. How long have you been doing it for?
I've been doing it since January 2012. So it's 13 and a bit years, and it's been a wild ride, but having such a good time. And I've still got a good sort of 7-8 months to go with the guys, and just really looking forward to all of the concerts to come and creating some more memories.
Yeah, and Jules, you've been doing it, it's about 10 years, is it now?
Yeah, so September 2014, so I guess coming up to 11. Chris is the kind of one sort of step above me in terms of the most recent to have joined when I joined. So we feel close in brotherly age in King Singer's years.
What's the record of years that someone served as a King Singer?
David Hurley, right? First countertenor from 1990. I think January 1990 through till August 2020. 2016. Yes.
Wow.
So, because I remember his starting year, because he would always say to me, because I basically overlapped with him for 2 years, and when I joined, he was very fond of the fact that he had joined before I was born. So that then only just. Yeah, I think 3, because I was April 1990. So yeah, 3 or 4 months before I was born, he started in the group.
So what are your, if people don't really know what the setup of the King Singers is, what are your roles within the King Singers vocally, and how do you fit in with the other members?
Well, there's 2 countertenors, 2 male falsettists, if you like. There's 1 tenor, Jules. There's 2 baritones, of which I'm the upper baritone, and 1 bass. And it's always been that way. And it was always that way only because those were the 6 mates. And they just happened to kind of, in a way, lock on to something that we now know is really has a lot of benefits, because it creates this kind of pyramid of sound where you've got 3 people reading the bass clef, and then you stack on top, and so there's a real richness to the sound. Perhaps you would normally see 2 tenors, and so I think we each have sort of a fixed role, but there's a bit of flexibility. I have to bridge the gap between Jules and Nick. So at times I'm, tenorial, and at other times I'm more of a baritone. So and Jules, can tell you a bit more about what he does, but he has to bridge the gap between me and Eddie. So sometimes he's almost like a third countertenor in certain pieces. So that requires a different sort of use of his voice. But I should let you speak for yourself, Jules.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely right. Yeah, we're kind of so dovetailed in that, and obviously the definition of close harmony, which is kind of what what our group is known for, is we are literally singing in a very close proximity to each other in terms of range. But as you go up through the group in terms of voices, the colours, the timbres are developing or changing, in a way which means that it's like a kind of relay race where you're passing on the baton between 2 points, and each of those points is changing in style, in texture, and it's kind of, it's a really interesting, nuanced role that each of us plays vocally.
And I suppose the kind of, I don't know, the selling point or the unique point about the King Singers is that as a whole you have such a fantastic blend, and I think, I don't know, from outsider perspective, that would be the word that would sum you guys up. The kind of the blend is just so kind of top tier, and obviously, depending on what the arrangement is, a lot of you will kind of step forward and do a solo. But quite often, actually listening to it's hard to pick apart the voices, even if you are listening quite well, and even if you know the voices quite well. So that's it's really fascinating. And Jules, do you have to kind of flip into falsetto quite often to kind of blend in with the countertenors?
So it's funny when you say flip, I think for me there's a little bit more nuance than that. So I cover kind of voix mixte, which is like mixed voice, somewhere between my head and falsetto. I think it's quite rare that I'm just singing pure falsetto. So I like to be in my head. It's kind of centered around a head voice, where I can then dip down to chest, or sort of dip up into the kind of falsetto range. But it's kind of, I think in order to find that perfect, like I was saying earlier, you're on the spectrum of timbre and color. And so if Chris's baritone sound is kind of, one end, and Eddie's countertenor sound is the other, the falsetto sound, then I'm anywhere sliding on that scale. And ideally, there's never going to be a kind of extremity of A or B. It's going to be somewhere in that. And that's something that you just kind of learn to do by listening and kind of trying to imitate the sound that is, in fact, kind of whatever it is that you're needing to fill in that moment.
It's really fascinating because before the King Singers, you were thinking about life as a soloist, weren't you, Jules?
Yeah.
And
actually Chris as well. Yeah.
Chris,
It's I mean, I was just, doing my master's in vocal performance, and I was enjoying oratorio and learning some, Mozart and Handel arias, as a very young tenor, kind of not ready for performance yet, for public exposure, and that's particularly in the Mozart area. Handel, I was starting to get into that. And then, it's sort of the prospect, when the job came up, I thought, close harmony. I used to love doing that at university. And I know that the job is a dream job, but it doesn't quite accord with my identity in that moment, which is like identifying more as a kind of, solo Bach, all that kind of stuff. And so it was a little bit of a sort of difficult decision there, but just rationally, I was like, well, I've got to, how often do you get these kind of job, opportunities?
Yeah.
As a musician, and we all grow up being told, by good music teachers, obviously encouraged and developing our musical skills, but always a kind of sense of like, look, it's a difficult career if you're going to try and go for it, but if you can't live without it, then I guess you should give it a try. So
yeah, I feel like that kind of shows the ultimate ability of a musician to be able to adapt what you're doing to what the situation is. And Chris, did you find it quite hard to go from a position where you were training as a soloist to becoming, well, very much part of a team, and sometimes you do a solo, but it's not quite necessarily in the style that you may have trained with?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think for me, having been a music teacher, I always wanted to be a professional singer, and part of my journey was trying to figure out what that might look like. And like Jules, I enjoyed everything, whether it was solo song, art song with piano accompaniment, be it German or French or Italian or English, or oratorio. I dabbled with a bit of opera, but I'm not sure that was my calling in life. And I obviously loved choral music. And so part of my journey was coming over here, and I had intended to live for a few years, gain residency, and then make the most of the British passport and apply to one of the colleges. So I was due to follow in Jules's footsteps, but then the King Singers came a calling, and I sort of skipped a few of those processes and went straight into this. And in a way, this is what I want to do. I've always wanted to travel and sing. I didn't realize it would be the King Singers when I moved from New Zealand, but it's very quickly become the dream job. And for me, I love being able to bring in a bit of the solo technique that I enjoyed training, but then doing what we all do, which is 6 people trying to make one instrument. And so you have to leave your ego at the door. And that can be hard at times, but equally it's really rewarding because you get to share in the spoils. All 6 of you can make something which is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was the process of actually becoming a King Singer? You say like a kind of a tap on the shoulder type thing, or a knock on the door, or however, because I know that right now you're actually in the process of looking for the new King Singers, and it's a slightly different process this time because you're actually doing an open application, but that's not really been the case in the past, has it?
No, I think back in the day it was more. I mean, back in the day it was more golden handshake. It was
Right.
like, would you like to join the group? I think now, both Jules and I were invited to audition. We were recommended by people that had heard us, and the group had approached trusted individuals in the music world for their opinion, and our names came up, and so we were invited. And you still have to go through the process, a 2-3 step process of singing with the group, and all the repertoire and all the other sort of conversations that come along with that. But now we are embracing the fact that actually there might be a few hidden gems out there, and so as well as asking for someone's opinion on, have you heard some good singers, ultimately we want to know if there are people that would put themselves forward, and self-select a little bit. And we're delighted to know that tomorrow we'll be sifting through just under 100 applications. So.
Wow.
So that's going to be really cool. So I'm looking
I wonder if
forward to
you'll get some hidden gems, but also possibly some interesting applications as well, I expect.
Well, I'll let you know tomorrow.
I wonder if you get any kind of like rappers or anything. Say, oh, we need to switch up the vibe of the group. We need to kind of, put something fresh on the King Singers.
Fascinating.
How did you? Were you both kind of fans of the group before you joined, or were you just kind of aware of them?
The group came to my school when I was 16 in 2006. So, and I remember the concert being advertised around, the internal school network, and I didn't know who the group was in terms of, because that I only started really getting to a cappella as opposed to, church music I'd done all through my younger years. But then it was only in my sort of mid to late teens that I started to really understand or get an insight into what a cappella was and how that was different from choir singing. So I went along to the concert and it was amazing. But I'd sort of, it wasn't, firstly I thought it was like so good that I these are like ridiculously talented people that, but also it was kind of different kind of world from what I'd been used to. It wasn't, Bruckner Locussiste or, Psalm 121. And then actually I realized that through then my late school years and university, I was in a cappella groups. And again, I hadn't really associated the King Singers as being like the kings of a cappella, as it were, but rather just like, oh, that's a name that I hear. And I'd sing arrangements, I'd sing like in these a cappella groups like Blackbird, and So It Goes, The Oak and the Ash. And it was only then in my when I was getting to my second or third year of university that I realized, oh, actually the King Singers are the groups that actually coined these arrangements, that actually a lot of these arrangements are that they've put them out into the world. And and I then started to realize actually how big a deal but more importantly, kind of how influential the group had been over many decades. And that's when I started to realize. And then I remember having a conversation with a friend who knew Johnny Howard, who was our former bass. And I remember them saying, yeah, it's a great job as well. Like you get to travel the world and singing top venues. And, obviously it's a job where you have lots of work, right? So, which as a kind of, when you're considering, should I go into music, there aren't many of those jobs that exist. So I remember thinking, wow, that'd be a really cool job to have, just from not only a musical and the travel point of view, but just from a, trying to make a good career, perspective. So yeah, that was my understanding of the King Singers as I was growing up.
Yeah, I first encountered them in a chamber choir in New Zealand that I was a part of called Cantores. It was run by Brian Law, who's no longer with us, but he was one of my great mentors. And he would always program a real eclectic bunch of music, from Ligeti all the way through to Stravinsky and Duruflé and everyone. And he had close harmony stuff in there. And I remember singing Michel and Yesterday and absolutely loving it. And that was when this sort of idea was sown. But then it didn't really dawn on me a lot more until I came over to England on a trip in 2008 with the Christchurch Cathedral Choir. And we were singing in cathedrals and whatnot. And it was right at the time when the King Singers were celebrating 40 years, and they'd had their prom at the Albert Hall. And it was a night off for us somehow. And so a few of us went down and stood at the front in the standing only tickets and watched the show and just thought, man, imagine what it would be like to be on, be on stage with those guys. And then 10 years later at the 50th on the Albert Hall stage, there I was. So it was kind of wild to think, about how these things sort of have a way of coming full circle, right?
That's amazing. I love that kind of full circle moment. The first time I heard the King Singers perform, I was singing with the National Youth Choir, the National Youth Training Choir, and they had a big, I think, again, it might have been some kind of like 40th anniversary or something for the National Youth Choir at Birmingham Symphony Hall. And the King Singers, I think Eric Whittaker was there and did his piece, I can't remember what it was called now, with the King Singers.
Stolen Child?
Stolen Child, yeah. Amazing piece, really fantastic piece. If you don't know it, definitely try and find it, because it's a really, really cool piece. And then I knew of the King Singers because I heard them, I'd listened to them. I had a couple of CDs, but when I first heard the group in person, it just completely blew me away. And it was, I think the group did they did Stolen Child plus about 5 or 6 close harmony numbers, kind of like Whittaker Fair and It's a New World and things like that. And it just completely blew me away. That the expert level of the blend, it's just the kind of the theatrics of it as well. Just having fun with it. It was really, really great. So you guys do the audition. You get into the King Singers, and then you go out on tour all around the world. What would your kind of average day in the life of a tour be as a member of the King Singers? I expect there's probably a bit of variation day to day, but what would you say would be kind of the average sort of day after you've kind of travelled to your venue and things like that?
So yeah, I guess there's obviously, as you say, variation. If we're lucky enough to arrive at the destination the night before the concert, then it's really nice, because then you get to bed and then wake up. Psychologically, waking up in the place that you're meant to be that day is a kind of in itself relatively restful. Whereas we do have some days where you wake up and it's like, right, 2 flights via Chicago. Say if we're in the USA, it'd be often, well, not often, but sometimes I have 2 flights via the hub airport of Chicago, say, land, pick up the car rental, drive like hour and a half, and maybe pick up some lunch on the way at like an Applebee's or some other kind of
nice.
food joint, and then get to the venue, do a bit of warming up. Now it would be Piers, who's our bass, who's kind of in charge of like stage management, so liaises with the house kind of theatre on lighting and kind of stage setup and things. So he'd go on and do a bit of prep before the rehearsal starts. And maybe we're having a little bit of a couple of snacks and refreshments, whatever. Then we get on stage, start the rehearsal. Rehearsal will often be an hour and a half, maybe sometimes as long as 2 hours, and sometimes shorter, closer to an hour, in which we're doing some sound check stuff for that day, making sure that we're comfortable with the acoustic. If there's a little bit of amplification that's needed, which generally there doesn't tend to be, but if we're in a big space, then we'll need that, or if we're with the orchestra, whatever. And then generally we're rehearsing sort of ahead of time. So we're rehearsing for the, next week, next month, projects, programs, recordings, collaborations, whatever it is.
And TikToks.
TikToks, absolutely. Yeah, we now schedule in some videoing time for social media, filming once every couple of weeks or so. And then we have a dinner break for 2 hours, during which we obviously eat earlier so that we've got more digestion time ahead of the concert, but also gives us a bit of vocal rest time where we're not having to sing and sort of talk too much. And then the concert will be sort of 2 hours generally with an interval. And then we'll head back to the hotel, maybe go for a post-concert reception, drinks if there is one with the sponsors or whatever, or depending again on what we have the next day. If it's an early start, then we'll probably get straight to bed. If we've got a bit more time, then we might have a little nightcap or something.
Rock and roll.
Get on the phone to the loved ones. Yeah, but not so much rock and roll these days. But
yeah. Well, I suppose vocal health is a massive thing, and actually, I'm very intrigued as to what you have to say about this, because I was going to ask you, how do you keep your vocal health maintained throughout these very long touring schedules? I mean, you're on tour for what, 3/4 of the year, pretty much, aren't you?
Basically, yeah, a couple hundred days a year.
Do you have go-to exercises? Do you steam? Do you? I don't know. I think as a musician and a singing teacher myself, I'm very interested to know how you keep your vocal health going. Also, aside from not necessarily having lots to drink after a show.
Yeah, I think one of the important features of keeping keeping in good vocal shape is just doing the basics. If you can have a good night's sleep and you can get some exercise and you can hydrate, you can pretty much cope with most things that are thrown at you. When any of those things are compromised, it does make it really challenging when you're on stage and you're just thinking, if I didn't have to be in that air-conditioned plane for the last 8 hours, or if I didn't have that person next door making lots of noise, and I could have had a bit of sleep, or, if you're feeling a bit lethargic because you haven't been moving your body, because, sometimes if you're traveling for 12 hours, it's actually more tiring than if you were walking around for 12 hours in a funny kind of way. Just being sedentary for such a long time, is knackering. And so all of these other things sort of have an impact on the voice. And I think the voice is one of the first sort of warning signs for the body to say, how are you feeling? And if we start losing our voice, it's generally because we're not looking after ourselves or things have happened out of our control. And so, having a cold on tour, is an occupational hazard. And so, I think there's no real substitute for sleep, exercise, and water. I do sometimes steam if I can. I like doing a bit of yoga and stretching out the body. Jules loves going for a run. I like going for a workout. We try not to eat too late because one of singers' sort of worst. I don't know what the right word is here. It's not a nightmare, but like one of the most challenging aspects of being a singer. You work late. You might be hungry after the performance, but the problem then is that if you don't give yourself a few hours for the food to properly digest, and you go to sleep, then you're more susceptible to something like acid reflux. And you wake up in the morning just feeling a little groggy, a little, you're thinking, I didn't really drink too much last night. I didn't really, but it doesn't take much, for the cords to be a bit singed from acid reflux. So that's tough because you want to relax after a concert and hang out and debrief or just, do whatever you want to do. And so, that's a bit of an occupational hazard too. I don't know what you think, Jules.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. Get an extra pillow under there, I think, is a key.
I think because singing, it's not just your voice, you've got to look after it. So it's a full body experience, really, isn't it? Because especially if you are, you need to do day after day of concerts, you need to be able to physically withstand it. So actually, getting into the running, the yoga, calisthenics, whatever you're doing, I guess that's super, super helpful. Again, as you say, especially if you're kind of sedentary for long haul flights, So we've just been talking about vocal health and what time you should eat. I find that sometimes with my shows when I'm gigging, my sound checks and kind of setup starts to overrun, and sometimes I get under an hour before the gig, and I think, I've got to have some food, otherwise I can't really do the gig. But then if I eat anything within an hour of performing, I find it's really tricky. It's quite tough, which is slightly odd in a way, because I used to sing in a wedding and function band. You'd get given sort of wedding food, kind of like, I don't know, whatever, a lasagna or something, half an hour before you perform, and then you just got to get on with it. But I did actually hear this week, talking of vocal health, apparently with the Oasis reunion, the two Gallagher brothers have been saying that they've been using straws for warm-ups. So instead of kind of doing vocal exercises and embarrassing themselves with arpeggios and things, they've been using vocal straws, which is quite interesting. Do you guys ever use that?
I don't use vocal straws, but I've got some opera friends who swear by them, and I don't know if you've had any experience with that, Jules, but
no.
But I think Pat might use them sometimes. I've got a feeling he's got access to a straw.
I've got. No,
I was just going to say, is it something you've done a lot of?
No, I haven't actually. I was actually kind of thinking, maybe I should follow in their footsteps and start doing it a bit more. But my vocal warm-ups before a gig usually involve a lot of humming, a lot of sirening and things like that, and usually starting it off quite gently and kind of building it up. Do you have any kind of... We've spoken about vocal health. Do you have any specific kind of warm-ups that you do before a show? Do you do them individually? Do you do them as a group?
I don't know about you, Jules, but my favourite one is just some really gentle humming. I start in the middle and I start oscillating, and I go up and down, and I just explore the bottom register first before I start going a bit higher. I always warm up my falsetto. And for me, because we sing a lot, I don't always feel like I need to do a really long warm-up, because it's almost like you're perpetually warmed up by just touring a lot. Yeah. But if my falsetto is in good form and good nick, I feel confident that the show's going to be all right, because that for me is my test. If I've got a good falsetto, the voice is in good shape. If I've got no falsetto, I'll be getting creative.
Yeah. How do you? Sorry, carry on, Jules.
I was just going to say, I think for me, I think similarly to Chris, I don't do too much actual vocal warming up really, because we always have the rehearsal in which we can start off gently and then get into it. But for me, it's the breathing exercises that are most important, because I think a lot of singers feel this way, but basically a lot of, if you can get a really, really solid breath control system, breath support system in place, then actually that solves 99% of vocal problems. And so things like the straw exercise, I'm sure, I have never done it before, but I imagine part of the kind of the benefits of it are that it encourages consistent breath control. And same with a good hum or of fizzing around on these kind of, if you can create a consistent airflow, then that's kind of half the battle won, I think.
And then you can sing Flight of the Bumblebee with those sounds as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What if disaster strikes and one member of the King Singers, it's just that they're ill, or the voice is completely shot, or whatever's happened, they can't make it onto stage that night? Do you have any stand-ins? Do you do it as a 5-piece or even a 4-piece? Have you ever had that when 2 people can't do it?
We've never had a 4-piece, but we've had 5-piece, 5-man shows. It is part of the job, right? Like sometimes you are just unable. Unfortunately, Pat last year suffered from pneumonia, and so had to take an extended leave of absence, and that was serious, And Eddie did an amazing job stepping up, and we had to redo the program. We try and honour the original program that the promoter has bought. So we try and do lots of workarounds and lots of roves where we jump up and down in parts to try and make sure we cover all the harmony. But if we have to do a wholesale change, then we just notify the promoter, and we choose some other repertoire that we think fits the kind of theme or mood or vibe, but as a wholesale like for like swap. And so, the benefit of having iPads on tour means that you can download lots of things very easily from our large online library. In the past, it was slightly trickier when we used to carry around, stacks of music. So life has gotten a lot easier with iPads to sort of navigate these situations. And now that, we're looking to the future and going, look, if someone's going to have some paternity leave, we know that around this time, we're going to need to have a 5-man show. And so we can plan things in advance, so it's not so on the fly. And so you can get quite creative, and it serves us well. So we've got the only person that we haven't road tested this with is Jules, so he's not allowed to ever get sick. Otherwise it gets a little tricky, because there's 2 countertenors, there's 2 baritones. Nick's a low bass baritone, so he can cover a bit of Piers as well if Piers needed to have a night off. But no one can really cover Jules. He is a unique voice amongst us. There's no one that really can do that. So I don't look forward to the time that he has to have a night off before I leave the group, and I have to somehow sing tenor for the whole concert.
Just to qualify that with, it's not the fact that it's me, it's that the tenor part is, like, I think quite unique, because it's got a lot of high, quite soaring sound qualities to it, which can't quite be done by countertenor. And obviously it's too high for, nor can it really be covered by a falsetto from a baritone or indeed a baritone chest. So yeah, and it's got quite a lot of solos as well, which kind of in that range, which is inaccessible for a baritone and a second countertenor. So it's kind of like,
I really hope you're enjoying this episode of Notes from School with the King Singers. And if you are enjoying it, please do leave me a review. Just all you need to do is tap 5 stars. That's all you need to do. You'll get a gold star from me if you do. And that just really helps with the visibility of this podcast. And if you're watching it on YouTube, you can leave a nice comment and give it a like and all that kind of stuff, or share it with your friends. We've got lots more questions coming up, including you can find out what Chris and Jules' favourite roadside snack is. Okay, so get ready for part 2 of this interview with the King Singers. So I'm going to take it back right now. away from the days of the King of Singers, back to your school days. And this is a podcast where I've talked a lot about music in primary schools and the importance of music education for young people. And do you have any specific memories of singing at school, or maybe perhaps being put into a close harmony group at school? Whether you're at primary school or secondary school, Chris, what were your memories? Because you grew up in New Zealand, is that correct?
I grew up in New Zealand, and I wanted to sing because my brother sang. And I think any younger sibling probably likes to follow in their older siblings' shoes, whether it's sports or music. And so he sang, so I wanted to sing. And I sang in the Canterbury Choral School, and I went along each week, and I started to learn how to read music, but it was mainly done by ear. Someone would sing and we'd sing back. And I think that's a great way to learn. You know, if you're someone who feels comfortable demonstrating, it's a really powerful tool in your teaching arsenal. And so I loved that. And then I joined the cathedral choir when I was 10, which is perhaps a little old for cathedral choristers. Some might join at 8. But I was still, I had such a great time. Although I remember distinctly on day one reading the music, and I would follow the line, not realizing that it was soprano, alto, tenor, bass, organ. And so I quickly got lost. I was about six pages behind probably. But then, you know, over time, our wonderful director of music, David Childs, would teach us all of the French rhythms, taffy, taffy, ta-ta-ti, all of those sorts of things. And we would learn interval training, and we would learn different languages. And before you knew it, singing every morning became such a great training, you know, and I wish there were more places that could teach people how to sing on a daily basis, because I think you would benefit so much. And I think all school singing would be wonderful if there was more of it. You know, I know it's sometimes left to the bottom of the rung, and it's only if teachers feel comfortable singing that it happens. And music education is probably quite different from what it was 50 years ago. But in New Zealand, I had a healthy diet of singing, and then at high school, I joined a barbershop quartet and all the choirs. I was still singing as a treble until I was 16. Wow. So needless to say, I had countless girlfriends until that point. But yeah, so I was sought after in my barbershop quartet because I could do the high part comfortably all the way through high school, and I really enjoyed that. And then I would sing in the cathedral choir. I sort of went from countertenor, treble to countertenor, and to sort of tenorish, something baritone, and just sort of gradually worked my way down. Yeah. And so that was my kind of diet, really, a daily diet of singing. And there are not many places in New Zealand that you have that daily training. There's really only Christchurch in New Zealand, in the South Island. And it follows the model that you have over here in England. And so by the time I came over here, it was a case of there's just a lot more of what I'm used to, but it's certainly not the trend in New Zealand to sing every day. So hopefully that might change, although there's a lot more Māori singing as well in New Zealand than there ever was when I was growing up. So that's become much more commonplace. And so all the kids are singing lots of Māori songs, which is wonderful. And so, yeah, so I feel very fortunate to have had encouraging singing teachers and just general singing, just general teachers who saw that I loved singing, even if it was to buck the trend and be singing super high for a very long time. But yeah, here we are, and it's all paid off, right?
That's fantastic. And that's the thing, because just singing from that young age, it just really sets you up for life. And do you know actually if schools in New Zealand generally sing still? Do you go back often?
So I do know that there is school singing. I think it varies depending on what people you've got on staff. I still think that is very commonplace. You know, we have a wonderful primary school singing festival in New Zealand. And particularly in primary school in the Christchurch area, in the wider Canterbury area. And that's wonderful, you know. But even then, it will vary depending on who's in charge. We have a wonderful high school singing competition called the Big Sing, and you see clips on YouTube every year. But when you delve below the surface, it's still very much dependent on who's in charge and what the quality is like. But, great that kids sing. And then there's this massive drop-off when they finish high school, and it's hard to sustain singing. Kids want to do other things, right? They want to go to university and travel a bit, and maybe they pick it up, 15, 20 years later, after they've traveled and maybe had a family and whatnot. And so you have these choral societies which are filled with 50, 60, 70-year-olds. And it's how do we get that kind of middle bracket to be really engaged, because they were singing at primary and high school and then they just stopped.
I'm just impressed that people are still singing at high school, to be honest, or that you've had an experience of seeing that, because I think in the UK, a lot of people after primary school, getting into high school or secondary school, wherever they're at, a lot of people actually just do not do any singing whatsoever. Really? Aside from possibly when they're in their first... I mean, at my secondary school, we had kind of like the full year had to sing in like the full year choir kind of thing. But after that, it kind of dropped off. And I think because I went to like an all-boys school, it was very much not cool at all to be singing. So actually, by the time I got to about 16, 17, I set up a barbershop group in my school because there wasn't one. There'd never been a barbershop group. So I kind of wrote my own arrangements and found some arrangements online and some of the music books. Actually, a couple of the King Singers books, which I had, funnily enough. So I think one of them was like the 25-year anniversary book with... what's in that one? I think Blackbird and a few other bits and pieces. But yeah, and so kind of diving into those, it's great. And I mean, some of it was too hard for us, but we gave it a go. And I even did like an arrangement of like the Family Guy theme tune and things like that. Just kind of just like fun, or like the Beach Boys, just something to get started and just have a go at singing in harmony at that age when it's not very cool. But Jules, you've been singing all your life, really, haven't you, as well?
Yeah, actually, quite similar to Chris in that kind of English church choir tradition. So, practice every day, even song most days of the week. So you're covering a lot of repertoire from about the age of 8. My dad was also a cathedral organist and choir trainer, so I had that extra kind of at-home influence as well as, at school and at choir. So similar to Chris. And then I think through high school, as I mentioned earlier, I think I got into a cappella because there were already a couple of a cappella groups set up. And I guess in my school, I was a music scholar, so that in itself, I think that, it was an all-boys school, but it wasn't, I think being a music scholar, especially as you got a bit older, sort of 16, 17, 18, it became kind of quite a cool thing, and we'd often be leading the school orchestra or the choir in the whole school assembly kind of thing, to maybe not quite the full 1,200 boys, and so then you'd be seen by your whole year group doing something and kind of you're on stage and kind of being celebrated in a way, which was nice. When you're a bit younger, 13, 14, 15, maybe it wasn't quite as cool and, and anyway, so doing the a cappella groups was really fun. And we were encouraged very much to start our own groups. And if you wanted to do some music or put on a piece, then you would be, get together with a friend and work out how to plan it for the next term's concert kind of thing. It's kind of quite cool. So that was quite a very positive environment for that. So I feel quite, grateful, fortunate to have had that, because it's not, as we're talking about, it's not often the case that that can happen in schools. And then I was also on violin and piano. Those were violin particularly was my main instrument above singing. In fact, I went through university thinking I would become a violinist over that of singing. And then it was only by virtue of my university choir having such a big commitment every day, and violin was a lesser commitment. So then singing took over. But in terms of, it's interesting, isn't it? What you're talking about, particularly at high school level with kids, how do we get the kids to feel that singing is cool? I'm quite interested in, what the whole sort of pitch perfect glee kind of culture has done to the education of singing. I don't know if that's helped. I don't know what you've seen in your teaching, James. I know that singing teachers at schools these days, it's a lot of musical theatre they're teaching, or Disney songs, rather than Handel arias, obviously, which can happen. But I don't know, what's your take on the kind of the relevance of pop music and kind of a cappella glee pitch perfect culture on singing today?
I think those influences broaden the appeal to singing, and it means that more people that aren't necessarily focused on singing lessons will have a high likelihood of getting into it. So I think because kind of Pitch Perfect and Glee and all that kind of stuff, it was pretty big about 10 odd years ago. So I think that probably encouraged a lot more people to think, actually, it is, it's part of the mainstream now, whereas before it might have been something slightly more niche. But if someone, it's almost like a gateway, I think, in a way, sort of seeing those sorts of things, and you might sing. There might be like an end of year concert or something, and you think, oh, I really enjoyed singing with other people. How about I kind of pursue it a bit more? And if you're lucky, you'll get a singing teacher if you can afford lessons, or if you are able to have a scholarship or whatever. And that singing teacher might then kind of channel your abilities into certain directions. So if it turns out you're a natural kind of musical theatre style performer, you might think, okay, great, let's go down a certain route. And nowadays, actually, it's quite good because a lot of schools obviously are very keen for pupils to do exams in music, whatever instrument you've got. And now there actually are musical theatre, specifically ABRSM musical theatre exams, and other examples are available as well. But that can kind of channel you down a certain route, and then I think from there, because I've had pupils that have done musical theatre exams, and then I can say, okay, well, you can maybe broaden your horizon slightly by looking at operetta, so Gilbert and Sullivan, for example, and then they think, oh, that's really good, what about this? And then I say, well, actually, they were slightly inspired by, give them like a bit of Mendelssohn or a bit of Handel or whatever. So you can actually, what I try and do is have a bit of a pipeline and show kind of the evolution of how music influences worked and things like that. But I know you guys as a group do a lot of outreach work, don't you, with communities and schools? Do you go into schools very often?
Not so well. A mix. So, I mean, we've done a fair amount of work at high school, also at tertiary level, with colleges in America and whatnot. And we've done a little bit of primary school work going into schools, and that is super cute. Seeing the little kids singing their heart out. Full body is involved, you know, when they sing. It's awesome.
There's no inhibition at that age, I think.
That's what's awesome, isn't it? Like, they just have no filter. They just if they love what they want to do, then they just go for it. And I think that's I want us to keep that as long as possible. And I wonder what happens to make kids self-aware. Like, at what point does self-awareness kick in, and how can we delay it? It's pretty cool. We have a global foundation in America, and it gives us the opportunity to provide workshops for free to lots of students who wouldn't otherwise have access to that level of education. And we'd love to do more, frankly. There is more capacity within the group to want to do that. But it's so rewarding. I remember working with some kids. They came across from Texas to Alabama, or was it Louisiana? One of the two.
Yeah.
And that's,
to be fair, I don't have many listeners from Alabama, so I don't. They'll forgive you if it's Louisiana.
Yeah, and half the kids had never left the hometown, and the other half had never left the state. And so here they were. We bussed them over the border. We gave them a workshop for an hour and a half or so, and then they attended the concert for free. And it was kind of wild, just literally looking at them in the concert with their jaws dropped, because they'd just never seen anything like this. And then we were delighted to know, about a month or so later, they were in a competition which they won. Great. Not that we're taking any credit for that, but it was just lovely to see how impactful the work that we do is, and it kind of keeps us grounded as well. That there are other people who have quite different upbringings to us, because it feels quite privileged to talk, about singing every day and having all this access to wonderful music and opportunities, and that's just not the case for lots of kids. And so our foundation is something that we would like to invest even more time in and resources to provide these opportunities, all across the world. So
I think on that point, Chris, it's really interesting. I think giving kids access to watching performances, live concerts is I'm realizing how important that is more and more. I was thinking, I was talking to my girlfriend, and she was saying that, her school kids, she teaches a big state school, but they have a fund which basically means that they go and see live concerts at, the Lincoln Center in New York. The school is nearby. Once a term, or they go to the Broadway, and actually see shows. And they, during the term, they're learning pieces which will then be, they'll be seen being performed by the professionals later that term. And for the kids, it's so inspiring. They get so worked up and hyped up in a really positive way, and they're talking about it at home, and they're researching more on the internet and things. I feel like if we can, again, obviously it requires money and kind of resource, but if there's a way of enabling kids to go and see live concerts, particularly in a field that they're interested in, that's amazing. And that's one of the great joys for me, the foundation is this free tickets to our concerts thing, where we work together with the promoter and say, hey, are there any schools or institutions or choirs or groups here, particularly perhaps who wouldn't be able to afford to come to a concert, where we could just simply offer them free tickets and maybe a bus to get them from their town to the concert, which might be nearby. And then, at the very minimum, we can sing for them, meet them, and if it works in the schedule, we can do a workshop with them. And that for me is like not much of a challenge for us, but it can be a really big reward for them.
You just never know what opportunities will spark inspiration, because it might be that you have 100 pupils going to see you guys, for example. Let's just say, I'm sure all of them enjoy it, but it might be that 95 of those have a good time and go home and don't really think about it too much. But then it might be that you get 5 of those 100 that come away from it with their entire worldview changed of what can be achieved through live music and the effect of vocal harmony on stage. There are no instruments. A lot of people might not have even had the idea of listening to music that doesn't have instruments, So I think just opening up a new world musically to people is just so fascinating. And as I said earlier, like before, I kind of had that experience seeing the King Singers for the first time. And growing up, I used to live very close to the venue that's at the Paul Lighthouse, actually, where the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra perform every week. And they did a scheme where they gave under 18s £1 tickets. So I literally went on my own quite often to the orchestra to see the symphony orchestra, and I sang in the symphony chorus as well. So it was amazing just to literally just go along, watch an orchestral concert, hear a piece of music that I probably would never have experienced, and also in terms of the vocal techniques and the workshops you do. I almost had a taste of that when I was about 16, I think, because I went on an Eton choral course, which is a singing course. I think it's called the Rodolphus courses now. But one of the ex-King singers, Stephen Connolly, actually came on and did a vocal workshop. And again, it was really fascinating to hear his take on life as a King singer and how to create the vocal sound that you guys do. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing to hear about all the outreach work that you do, and and how important it can be for people. And I just got another quick question about the importance of music, because I've found in the past, when actually I've had some tougher times and mentally struggling and things like that, that I've used music as a way to help me through that. And actually, even the King Singers music sometimes, I remember a Christmas a couple of years ago that was a bit tricky, and I put on a King Singers Christmas album, and that actually really just helped me lift me out of a kind of a darker place. But do you guys find that performing helps with your mental health, and do you kind of work together to help each other and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think music is transformative, isn't it? And at some point in our lives, we'll all know of a time that we listened to a track that transported us somewhere that we needed to be, or a memory that we wanted to relive, And one of the pieces that I listen to if I'm feeling like I need a bit of healing is the St. Matthew Passion. I just the sort of opening thing just starts bum, 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 ba, da, 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 and it's just grows, and there's that big pedal, and it's just like I just go, okay, now just let the world go and dissipate and just focus in on this. And I just love that opening movement. It's just so cool. I think for us, we take care of each other. We regularly check in with one another and ask ourselves, how are you feeling? What interference are you carrying? And, what are you hoping to get out of today or this tour? Or, what are your reflections on the past month or so? And so on a very regular basis, we are aware of how we're each doing. And if we're finding things hard at home or whatever's going on in our life, at least on a base level, we have a good understanding of how we're doing. And so that's been quite a change for us in the past 7 years or so, I would say, that we have started to do a lot more of that. And it's been pretty special to be part of that movement in the group, to being more empathetic and kind and caring.
I suppose when you're touring constantly with 5 other people, they might be your best mates in the world, but after a certain amount of time, actually, I think, okay, I need a bit of time for myself. So it's really great that you're so open about that. And I can't imagine there are too many bands or musical ensembles out there that actually really do that. I mean, do you have kind of workshops within the group to talk about those sorts of things, or is it just kind of on a slightly more informal basis?
Yeah, well, basically in the pandemic, when we didn't have any concert work, but were still kind of active, we decided to, kind of look into that side of things, group dynamics, and we're looking at ways to feel connected whilst being kind of on video calls and things. And a sort of long-time friend of the group's, who happens to be a specialist in high-performing team dynamics, particularly working with like sports teams and things. He offered us some coaching sessions, so we took him up on it, and it's been amazing. It's been transformative and helped us, gave us the tools to communicate on the things that Chris was talking about, things like checking in with each other, sharing with each other how much we'd like to in a kind of as it were, like a formalized moment, just a window, should we say, during a busy tour, where we just talk about how we're feeling, or the tools to be able to talk to each other about slightly more difficult things, like something that you did the other day actually kind of got to me a little bit, made me feel a little bit sort of jarred or upset somehow, and to be able to open that conversation up just so that there's no kind of dirty laundry hanging in the air, but actually you're just addressing it early on and in a very kind of calm and and the intentionality is that we want to be as functional and operational and connected and well-oiled as possible, really. And that helps us to get through the tough times, And actually, Chris was saying, we all go through tough times, grieving or breakups and things. And for me personally, I think both having a team, a family, really, I think it's like brothers, really, I think, where you can, go for a meal together, or you can just switch off, be in each other's company, silently working away or singing together, whatever. But having that family as your workplace, plus then the catharsis of getting to getting on stage, singing songs about joy or heartbreak, or covering basically all the emotions that we go through as human beings, all the powerful emotions. That combination can basically, I believe, get you through anything. Because if you go through, particularly like in times of grief, whatever type of grief that might be, or depression in some minor way or a big way, whatever one might be going through, and not just for us, by the way, this is also the audience members who often talk to us about this. There is something where, by particularly singing, but also listening to music and saying or hearing those words, which are penned by writers and singer-songwriters who have gone through, they want to express these moments, it can really conjure up the emotions from the depths, and it's a great way of processing those kind of emotions. And having a good cry while singing or listening is a very, very powerful thing. I personally, I think it's so cool, and to be able to feel really human and really alive by experiencing those things. I just feel so grateful to be able to, your office is a place of catharsis in some ways. It's like, what privilege is that, compared to someone going to an office and sitting in front of a computer, and, that has its own benefits and I'm sure its own communities, environments. But when you can be like, I've got to go into work today, but my work is a sanctuary of 5 other guys who care, who are interested, who you can lean on, and with whom you get to make great music. That's so cool.
It's kind of amazing, actually. It's kind of like the parallels of the musical harmony alongside the emotional harmony as well, because in order to support each other musically, you also have to support each other emotionally as well, which is it's a really beautiful answer, actually. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. We are very sadly running out of time. It's been such a privilege to talk to both of you about all of this. It's been so fascinating, and if anyone's listening and wants to listen to your stuff, I mean, it's all online. I'm sure you can find us as whatever style of the King Singers, you'll be able to find it out there that you'd like. But just before we finish, I just got a few quick fire questions, if you don't mind. You can always just say the first answer that comes off the top of your head, but do either of you have a favorite King Singers album?
Yeah, it's good. It's called Get Happy from 1990s, and it's a beautiful jazz album, and it just, man, the sound on that is just spectacular.
I would say Great American Songbook.
Very good.
2013.
I'm just trying to think about what my favorite one is now. The folk songs of the British Isles is a great one, and the Simple Gifts album. I really love both of those. And actually, the one that I was talking about, the Christmas album, was, let's see if I can find it quickly. It was Christmas Carols with the King Singers. That was the lockdown one, I think. So when I heard that. Okay, this might be a bit controversial, but favorite country to perform in?
Ooh, I mean, I love performing at home back in New Zealand, because you look out and the sea of faces, and it's just full of friends and family and lots of wonderful memories that remind you of where you came from.
I want to say Japan because I have family there, but actually my answer is going to be Italy, just because the audiences are just absolutely so energized and loud and brilliant.
What are your both of your favorite songs to go to? That would be kind of like to bring the house down, kind of towards the end. If you could program your own concert, what song would you kind of finish on to bring down the house?
Oh, great shout. I mean, I think there's a new one in our library called Obla Di Obla Da. It's an old arrangement, but we've brought it back in the last couple of years, and it's become a firm crowd favourite. I love it.
It's absolutely insane as well. So I definitely encourage you to listen to it. It's a great arrangement.
I'd say Barbara Seville, the overture to Barbara Seville, another Brunswick arrangement actually, which is really fun.
Okay, I've got one final question. It's a little bit off kilter, but let's see if you've got an answer. So you're on the road, you're driving, you've been on the road for a while, and you get to a service station and you stop. What are your go-to snacks or sweets or treats that you'd go? Are you going to play it safe and have something nice and healthy, or are you going to just splurge and get a bag of Doritos or something?
Do you know, Doritos. I just cool ranch Doritos is a bit of a, yeah, I'm a sucker for that, man.
Any dips or just straight in there with the cool Doritos?
Just go hard on the Doritos. Maybe 2 packets.
Not the chili heat waves.
They're okay.
Okay. Cool original, just like Chris. Okay.
I think chili heatwave Doritos actually is pretty high up there. But generally, when we're in Germany and Europe, the paprika flavored Lays, I think it is, they're also killer. Yeah.
That for me, paprika Lays, that is the sign of a summer holiday. I think growing up, just like getting a pack of those in like the south of France. It's that's it. I love how you both went for crisps as well. That's great. Well, Chris and Jules, thank you so much for your time. Extremely appreciate. Well, I massively appreciate you guys coming on here and talking about your experiences and opening up about being in the King Singers. And hopefully, we'll do something together again. And if you are online, you might be able to see a little collaboration we've just done. But thank you very much. And there's a whole digital assembly of people applauding you. So yeah.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks so much.
And that's it. What a chat. I really enjoyed talking to Chris and Jules about everything to do with being in the King Singers, being a professional musician, some advice around health, mental health as well, which was very, very important. And of course, knowing that Doritos are number one and the service station stop off on tour. But that is it from me. I've been James B. Partridge, and this has been Notes from School Season 1. I hope we have another 26 episodes for the next season. In the meantime, have an amazing summer. Or if you're not listening to in the summer, have an amazing rest of the year, whatever time of the year it is. And keep on smiling, keep on singing. And see you soon for another episode of Notes from School, the podcast. Thank you so much for listening.